Well, it's day 17 of the government shutdown and still no deal in sight. This is now the third longest shutdown in modern U.S. history. After the Senate failed to break the stalemate for the 11th time, Majority Leader John Thune sent lawmakers home until Monday. Meanwhile, thousands of federal workers are furloughed and waiting for a paycheck now. The standoff boils down to a fight over health care tax credits. No surprise, Speaker Mike Johnson blames Democrats for blocking a deal.
If you're keeping count at home, we're on day 17 of the shutdown. The Democrats have now voted for the 11th time to keep the government closed. 11 times now. They've refused to just do their basic job, get the government going again, making sure that federal employees are paid, that our troops are paid, Border Patrol agents, TSA agents, air traffic controllers, and everyone else who relies upon the vital services of our federal government. They're being denied that because Democrats in Congress are playing games. And right now, to add insult to injury, if you're paying attention at home, you also need to make note of this. Yesterday, the Senate Democrats took it a step further. They rejected a standalone bill to fund our nation's defense and pay our troops. They voted it down. Now, why is that so noteworthy? Well, the bill was passed out of committee in the Senate with broad bipartisan support. And yet, the Democrats still engaged in a stunt on the floor, and they rejected it. So now they are on record specifically and exclusively to block the paychecks of the troops, to block the funding of our national defense in a very dangerous moment in world history. It is absurd to us. Leader Thune said this on the floor, on the Senate floor after that vote. He said, quote, "That one vote demonstrates just how fundamentally disinterested Democrats are in supporting our troops and providing for our common defense." Yes, that is exactly what we saw. And I suspect that if they were here today and it was on the floor, they'd do it once again.
Now, the House is still not even scheduled to come back yet. House Minority Leader Hakeem Jeffries counters, saying most Democrats won't accept a deal that doesn't include meaningful health care provisions, but they remain open to negotiation.
We look forward to sitting down with anyone, anytime, any place, either here at the Capitol or back at the White House, to reopen the government, to enact a spending agreement that actually makes life better for the American people, while also addressing decisively the Republican health care crisis that continues to hurt everyday Americans all across the country. Every day that goes by, there are people throughout America receiving notices that their health care premiums, copays, and deductibles are about to skyrocket. In the district in upstate New York, the North Country, currently represented by Elise Stefanik, there are couples who currently pay about $2,000 per year for their health insurance premiums because they benefit from Affordable Care Act tax credits. When those credits go away, that same couple will now pay more than $20,000 a year. They cannot afford that. These are working class Americans living paycheck to paycheck, struggling to get by, can barely survive, yet alone thrive. In this country, and this is the wealthiest country in the history of the world. So House and Senate Democrats are going to continue to hold firm as it relates to a basic common sense position that when we enact spending bills, we should be helping the American people, not hurting them. And so we will not support a partisan Republican spending bill that continues to gut the health care of the American people. But we will continue to extend that offer to our Republican colleagues and to President Trump and members of his administration. Let's sit down in good faith to reopen the government, to stand by our hardworking federal employees, to enact a spending bill that actually improves the quality of life of the American people, and to address the health care crisis that Republicans have created, devastating people all across the country, including in rural America, in black and brown communities all throughout America, in urban America, in the heartland of America, and in small town America.
Well, the impact is spreading far beyond D.C. Now protesters are gearing up for this weekend's second round of No Kings rallies across the country, blasting Donald Trump's shutdown and his recent immigration arrest. More than 2,500 anti-Trump protests are planned for tomorrow. That's about 450 more than were planned in June, all across the United States of America. I want to introduce our panel for tonight. We have Matt Manning, civil rights attorney from Corpus Christi, Texas. Look, Matt, I know that you had a lot to say to Roland about last week's football game. I'm so sorry. You'll have to wait a little time before you guys can have that conversation, but congrats on the win.
All right.
We also have Dr. Greg Carr from Howard University's Department of Afro-American Studies. He's here in studio. And Michael Imhotep, the host of the African History Network show, joining us from Detroit, Michigan. Matt, let's start with you. Can you break down really what's going on here legally? When Congress doesn't pass a budget, what does that actually mean for the rest of us?
Well, that's a good question. I think, across the board, what that means is a lot of the programs that are normally funded are not funded. And as it relates to people like myself who either practice law or have a case, it's interesting we're talking about this today because just today I got an email from one of the federal district courts basically saying that it's extremely limited in what it can do now because it's not funded. And then I got further emails from assistant U.S. attorneys with whom I have cases telling me that they cannot take any actions on their cases because the government isn't funded. So what this means is, practically, at least in the legal context, you're not having all the things that normally happen in a court continue to go on. I know that the federal judiciary has some limited capacity for now, but it's really kind of a major issue, of course, because not only are certain people not getting paid, I know that there are some agencies that are exempted. I think the Treasury Department and some others are continuing to have certain appropriations where they're staying open. But what this means is that the government is not functioning in the way the government is supposed to function. And what this 11th vote failing means is that the partisanship in Congress is at the point that they can't even get anything done. And we talked about that the last week. It's really just we as citizens should be infuriated that people in D.C. whom we send there to do their jobs cannot do the basic job of keeping the government open. And I think what this means beyond all of that is things like food banks are not getting the monies that they need. Other support programs are not being funded in the way that is necessary for citizens to get their services.
And Michael, how does this shutdown fit into the bigger history of how our government has treated Black workers and Black families?
Well, as I reminded people last Friday, the last government shutdown happened under Donald Trump, and it was December 2018 to January 2019, and it lasted 35 days. And that government shutdown was devastating for African Americans that work for the federal government, with basically 19% of the 2.3 million, or maybe 2.2 million now, federal employees. So when you have people who are furloughed, and we know early in the this current shutdown, at least 750,000 government employees were furloughed, which means that they cannot work and they don't get paid. Then we have people from TSA and other entities that have to still show up to work and are not getting paid. So this will have a huge impact, a negative impact on African American households. That's on top of the Doge cuts coming from Elon Musk, that Donald Trump unleashed on people, because those Doge cuts, you all know, had a devastating impact on African Americans in Washington, D.C. and the Washington, D.C. area. We saw a number of houses be put on the market, things of this nature. And it's important for people to really understand that 85% of government employees live outside of the Washington, D.C. area. They live all across the country. So, yes, this is having a devastating impact on the African American community. But if the American Care Act subsidies end, as they're supposed to at the end of this year, and they don't, and Democrats, Republicans don't fix that, that's going to have a devastating impact. And we know it's estimated that 11.8 million people are going to lose, at least 11.8 million are going to lose health care. So we're looking at short-term pain to try to stave off this long-term health care cliff that also affects affordability.
And Dr. Carr, let's bring you in. How does this government shutdown make us look to the world globally?
Well, the United States has lost the world PR battle. All you got to do is read any of the foreign papers and see the workarounds that are being put in place. Brazil reaching out to Nigeria for new billion-dollar deals, China in everybody's embassy proposing deals. You see that. I think this story in particular hinges around a purebred liar named Mike Johnson, a MAGA Muppet, in fact, who was taking his orders from the President of the United States. It's not about paying or not paying the troops. This is about the expansion of presidential authority. Donald Trump, who doesn't remember much these days, but when you hear him talk about constitutional law, he keeps repeating what's been put into his ear by a little nasty piece of work at the Office of Management and Budget named Russell Vogt. Article 2, Article 2, Article 2. They have this expanded theory of the presidency, the executive branch. And under that, that's what they're proposing to pay these troops with. The memorandum that Trump put out day before yesterday, this memorandum is written by Russell Vogt. It's to Pete Hegseth at the Pentagon. And it's from the director of the Office of Management and Budget. Trump's not running the government. He's just repeating what they're telling him to do. So when the Democrats voted against it, it's because they're not voting against paying the troops. What they're voting against is you can't expand presidential authority. The Constitution gives the power of the purse exclusively to Congress. So this is what this is really about. And so when the MAGA Muppet gets up in line, by the way, Mr. Congressman, it'd be a very nice day. Isn't it a nice day to swear in Gravalva? Release the Epstein files. You don't want to swear her in. She's an elected congressman. All this is really about something else. And he's trying to make it look like it's the Democrats versus now the troops. And that's just a bold-faced lie.
Do you think it's possible that lawmakers should or could face any type of penalties for what's happening?
Absolutely, because we live in an idiocracy. People will actually listen to that fool and think that's what's happening. And so they'll say, why are y'all against the troops? So they could absolutely face blowback. And that's why I hope that the Democrats in the Senate voted to advance this, because they're afraid of blowback and not because they don't understand that this is about something very different. It's about expanding this presidency beyond the scope that has ever been seen in this country.
Matt, I want to ask you, how does this shutdown, how does it impact our courts, housing and other civil rights cases? Can you talk to us in detail about some of those cases?
Yeah, and that's a great question. I actually don't know the answer. I mean, I think what's going to happen, like I was saying, is a couple hours before we came on the air, I got an email from the Northern District of Texas, and they indicated there that the court is going to continue to hear things. So I think especially with criminal matters, the court will still be open. But as it relates to what even lawyers for the United States are able to do, it's severely limited. Like I mentioned, I have a couple cases right now against the United States where the government is a defendant, and the attorneys reached out to me weeks ago and said, hey, we're not going to have money to do our jobs. We don't have support staff. If you file something, I can't respond to it. So I've got to ask that the court stays the case. And, you know, we already have a DOJ that is not enforcing civil rights laws. In fact, is trying to find a way to flip the script and enforce them for white people, right? But what this means is anybody who is required to have the government plead their case, maybe somebody, for instance, who is a victim in a criminal case and they have immigration matters incidental to their involvement as a witness in a criminal case. I mean, it may be that they're not having a visa processed, that they're not being protected the same way, any incidental hearings to their safety are not being held, or maybe being held in a longer time frame than they're supposed to. So I don't know the answer on the ground on what that's going to affect, but I will tell you my own practice, it's already been affected because my cases are on hold because the United States cannot pay the lawyers that represents it.
And to everyone, what are you guys hearing from people about how they're getting by while still waiting for Congress to act?
Who's that question for?
Anyone. I mean, really, what does the shutdown mean for the single mom working for the federal government or the family waiting for benefits to come through? How are they getting by?
Probably relying upon family. I have not seen, so I'm here in Detroit, okay, and I have a large social media platform, but I have it, but the overwhelming majority of the responses I've seen on social media is from African Americans is that they support the government shutdown. Now, as far as government employees, things like that, they're probably, relying upon family, tapping into what little savings they have. I haven't seen I remember in the last government shutdown, people having to call off from work, like working for the TSA. They couldn't afford gas to go back and forth to work, things like that. So I think as this goes on, you'll hear more stories like that. People trying to pay for childcare, can't pay for childcare, et cetera. But I haven't had people, and I know government employees, I haven't had people tell me about it now. I know congressional staffers. It's hard for them, but it hasn't gotten to the point where it was during the 35-day government shutdown. From what I'm hearing.
Yeah, I think that's true, but I also think that there are, we know this because we're in the area. There are two kind of broad categories for federal workers. That's really impacting us. You got those folk who are there for whom maybe this is a second job. They've been military, they retired, they came back. They're kind of in a position. Some of them are talking about retirement if they've been in the federal government 20, 30 years. Then they're the group that just came in 5 years, maybe at max. They're looking for jobs. I think the biggest kind of retirement we saw this week is Admiral Halsey. He's over the Southern Command in the Caribbean Sea, and he's like, we don't know why, but I can imagine he's like, we're not just coming out here killing people in the Caribbean Sea claiming we're chasing terrorists. But this man did 37 years in the military, so him stepping out, it might even be a raise to people that Social Security with his benefits and with his federal paycheck. So there's that group. I think they're fine. I think we're probably all more concerned about those younger folk, those transient folk, the people who operate around the periphery of the federal government, whether it's selling eggs and cheeses or whatever they're selling at the delis or the little shops or the people who clean up in the buildings. And, what are they doing? And I think that's probably the two categories.
Hello, I'm Isaac Hayes III, founder and CEO of Fanbase, and I'm here with a very important message. We are at a turning point in the Black community where we must have equity in the apps we use that scale to billions of dollars. But this time, we own the infrastructure, we own the culture, and we shape the future. And Fanbase is the future. Fanbase combines the free functionality of Instagram, TikTok, and YouTube into an all-in-one platform built for the evolution of social media and monetization. With over 1.4 million users, that's real proof that we are shifting the conversation of tech ownership and equity for creators. So right now, I want you to go to startengine.com/fanbase and invest today. The minimum to invest is $399. That gets you 60 shares of stock in Fanbase at $665 a share. This marks a turning point in Black ownership of social media. If we don't take this opportunity to own social media right now, we will always be customers to our own creations. And that can't go on. So once again, go to startengine.com/fanbase and invest today. We must own the platforms where our voices live, our stories matter, and where our culture drives the world. Thank you.